Can you tell me a bit about your life as a blind person?
Well, I was born premature, and that is how I became blind. I'm sure many people are familiar with that situation, with the oxygen thing and how it damages your brain. So I lost my sight completely when I was 2, so I've essentially been blind all of my life as I remember it. And yeah, I grew up in the Fraser Valley, going to school. I'm currently pursuing my master's degree in vision rehabilitation therapy from the University of Montreal. And so last year I moved to Montreal for the year to go to school, and I just recently moved back here in September, and I am currently finishing my practicum. I just really believe in lifting up my community and just showing people that they can be the best versions of themselves and do things that they never thought possible, or maybe that they didn't think they could do since losing their sight. I just want to bring hope back to my community and lift people up because I know how it is for people to place limits on you.
Can you tell me about your seeing eye dogs? So, I think we both get our dogs from the same school. Tell us about your dog. Is your dog your first dog? How does that work?
My dog is, I have a black lab named Shelby. And yes, we did get our dog from the same school, the Seeing Eye, which is a great school. And she is my fourth dog. I had three other dogs from a different school. I got Shelby in 2017, and she is the best dog I've ever had in my life. She's 45 pounds. She's tiny, but she's really sassy and she's amazing. She's 9. Well, she will be turning 10 in May. So we're thinking about retirement and trying to figure out when I'm going to apply back to the Seeing Eye and what that journey is going to look like.
And I know the answer to this, but can you just explain what Shelby does for you?
Yeah, so Shelby is a Seeing Eye dog, so she makes sure that I get around safely without running into something or tripping off a curb or getting smushed by a car. She is trained to take me around obstacles. Seeing Eye dogs are It's a team effort, so I need to know where I'm going and so that I can direct Shelby, and she makes sure we get there without injury or getting squished. She'll take me around poles in the middle of the sidewalk, or if there's a curb, she'll stop, and or if it's like a step up, she'll put her two front paws up on the step. And if it's like we're crossing the street and a car cuts us off or tries to run us over or something, she will react in a multitude of different ways depending on the situation. She might just stop and let them go, or she might back up really suddenly if it's coming right for us, or usually she'll just stop and let them go and then we'll carry on our way. The guide dog training is very rigorous, and one of the hardest parts too is what they call intelligent disobedience. So I have to know when it's safe to cross the street so that I can tell her to go forward. But if I was wrong or there was some reason why we couldn't, then she just would refuse to go. So that I can see is what the trainers have said is one of the hardest things for them to do, because they're not just listening to you, they're having to make a decision about, we're not going to go. My person says we should go, but we're not going to. So yeah, that's one of the most complicated things that thankfully she doesn't have to do very often.
So she's a smart gal and she knows how to have fun. Can you tell me about the incident that happened in December when you tried to take a bus?
So I live in New Westminster. My parents live up in the Shuswap, which is up in the interior part of the province. And so the only ways to get up there are either flying or taking a bus. It's about a 6-hour drive. I was taking the Ebus. In Canada, we no longer have Greyhound, so Ebus kind of came in and took that job. So it's basically a long haul bus. So I was taking it from the stop in Surrey to the stop in Kamloops, which is about 4 hours ish away. And my dad was going to meet me in Kamloops, and then he was going to drive us the rest of the way back to their house. So I arrived at the bus stop in Surrey, which is kind of in a weird location. It's in the parking lot of Guildford Mall, and it's not a very easy place to find. I took an Uber to the bus stop, and even the Uber driver was unsure where the bus stop was. It took him a good 10 minutes
Hmm.
to find where he could drop me off, and he was very kind. He was a great driver, and he said, don't worry, I'm gonna mute all my other trips until I find the bus stop. And he was awesome. So yes, it's always a blessing when you get a good Uber driver when you have a dog. But so I got dropped off at this bus stop, and the bus pulled up shortly after I got dropped off, and the driver got out, and she asked me, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Kamloops." And the first thing that she said is, "We don't have a reservation for a service dog on this bus." And I told her, "Well, I don't need I don't need an extra reservation for my dog." I said, "I have a ticket that's been booked in my name and paid for and everything." As soon as I said that, the driver just got this attitude with me, and she called her manager on the phone and said, "This lady is telling me that I don't know how to do my job and that she doesn't need an extra reservation for her service dog." That kind of pissy attitude was how she treated me the whole time. The manager spoke to me as well and said, "Well, you do need a reservation." And the manager also was not very nice to me. Unbeknownst to me, I was supposed to give them 48 hours notice that I was traveling with my service dog. And I'd ridden the E-bus before. I rode them in October for Thanksgiving. I took the exact same trip, and the driver was fine. I didn't call because I didn't know I was supposed to call. I just showed up and everything was fine. But this time, the driver just said, "The bus is completely full. There's no room for you. You can't ride today. No chance you're riding today." And there was another passenger who said, "You can sit beside me. I don't mind." And I said, "Well, can you tell that to the driver?" And I think he must have. I didn't hear that conversation, but the driver was claiming that she was going to have to block off 4 seats for me, and the bus was full, and so she didn't have to block off 4 seats. And I was explaining to her that my dog is 45 pounds. She's tiny. She can sit at my feet. We don't need any extra room. I was not asking for any extra room. It was not something that I needed. And so I explained that to her. I said, "I don't need any extra room. My dog will sit at my feet. I've ridden on the bus before, and there's plenty of room." I even offered, I said, "Can I get on the bus and see how much room there is in front of me and make that call for myself?" And she said, "No, no chance. You're not getting on the bus." And I explained that another passenger had offered to let me sit next to him, and she just said, "Nope, nope, you're not getting on the bus." And so I was really upset because I was trying to get home to my family for Christmas. And if I didn't get on the bus, I live 6 hours away from my family, so it's not really easy for me to get there. The flights were over $1,000 at that point because it was the holidays. Yeah, I was just trying to get home, see my family for Christmas. And so, yeah, I was really anxious and upset, and I'm just a pretty sensitive, emotional person anyway, and like I deal with anxiety. And so the whole thing was just very, very anxiety inducing for me. But I knew that I was being treated wrong. And so what I did was I thought, I have a ticket that's been paid for. I am allowed on this bus. There's no reason why I shouldn't be. So I walked further up the bus to where the door was. And then the driver started yelling at me. She said, "I'm trying to load luggage and you're in my way." And I was like, "Well, I'm just trying to get on the bus." And she said, "Well, you're not getting on the bus. No chance. You're not getting on the bus." And so I found the door was closed, obviously, because they didn't want me to sneak on the bus. But I kind of stood in front of where the door was, and I stood there and I refused to move. And I did not raise my voice. I didn't swear. I didn't cause a scene. I just stood there with my dog and my big suitcase, and I held up the bus for an hour. I did it for two reasons. Number one, I knew that this driver was just being a bully to me, and she just had it out for me. It was an honest mistake. I literally solved every one of her problems. So there was no reason why she couldn't let me on the bus. And so I did it because she was treating me wrongly. And also because, judging by the fact that it took the Uber driver an extra 10 minutes to figure out where the bus stop was, I knew that if I moved and cooperated and let the bus leave, that I was going to be stranded somewhere in Guilford Mall parking lot, and I'm completely blind. I don't have any vision. So I didn't know how to describe to an Uber driver where I was standing so that they could come get me, and I didn't want to be left in the parking lot in the rain. So those were my two reasons for standing in front of the bus for an hour. But eventually the police were called, and the last conversation I had with the driver was, the driver told me that I'm banned from Ebus for life because apparently I was being rude, unruly, and disrespectful. And then the police showed up, and they weren't really on my side either. They said, "This is a civil matter. We can't force them to let you on the bus. This is their policy." Officer who showed up spoke to me in a very patronizing way, and he said, "Well, sometimes when we travel, we need to do our research," and like, just the way he was talking to me was very patronizing. And so I said, "Officer, I'm not a child. I'm almost 40 years old. And, I really don't appreciate you being patronizing to me." And he said, "So you're almost 40 years old, but you didn't do your research about
Oh my God.
what you needed to do." And he was just like, nobody was standing up for me in that situation. Even the passenger who said that I could sit beside him was quiet. None of the other passengers who were waiting to get on the bus stood up for me. So I really felt like not only was this driver being a bully, the police was not on my side. None of the passengers were on my side. I felt alone and terrified and anxious and stressed because I didn't think that I was going to get to see my family. And so the police, I didn't want to leave. I would have continued to stay there, but I was on the phone with my mom, and she heard the whole thing and was trying to talk to the driver as well, and was obviously furious. And she was the one who canceled me. She said, "Just go with the police. They'll give you a ride home. You don't want to get arrested." So I did. I eventually complied, and they put me in the back of the cop car like a criminal. And I went with them, and they put me in the back of the cop car and drove me back to my apartment in New West. The- I just felt very humiliated and traumatized, and like I was just trying to stand up for my rights. And I really feel like if you comply and cooperate, then people will push you around and take advantage of you. But if you stand up for yourself, then you get banned and you get told that you're rude and unruly and disrespectful. So I really don't know, as people with disabilities in the world, what we're supposed to do, because it seems like we can't win either way.
Yeah, holy smokes, what a story. I I can't, like, when I am told to get out of a place or told that I can't come in because of my guide dog, I automatically start crying. So
Exactly. Yes,
I
me
don't
too. The
know, I
anxiety
don't know
just,
how you did it.
yeah, no, I don't know how I did it either, because my first language is crying as well. And I somehow, I mean, I cried when I was in the back seat of the cop car, yeah, I got out and my face was all blotchy and I was like, oh God, I hope nobody I know sees me right now. And I went up to my apartment and then I really did. Like I'd been holding it together all through the conversation with the driver, like for that hour, and then I just got home and I just lost it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you said, when you're told you can't come in, or even when someone asks you, is that a service dog? Like your anxiety just immediately goes from 0 to 100, and it's just emotions are high, and it's just so awful. And
And
yeah, it's honestly.
trying to live your life, and
Mhm.
people are, there is no reason for a 48-hour policy. You weren't asking for any accommodations. You should expect to show up at a bus just like any sighted person would. Get on the bus and be on your way and be at your destination in 6 hours. Like that makes sense to me. And Ebus has put some bizarre 48-hour policy thinking that, uh, I don't know, maybe it'll create more barriers for people with disabilities so they don't travel as much. What
Maybe.
would be the point?
I don't know what the point is, and the policy is, it is really stupid because it doesn't account for people that have to travel on short notice. I mean, most people are probably fine with 48 hours, but if you have to go somewhere quickly for a family emergency or something, and you just have to pack your bags and get on the next bus or leave the next day or something, like it doesn't account for life. And you're right, there's no reason for it. I was not asking for an extra seat. If someone had offered me an extra seat, would I have taken it so my dog could have some extra room on the floor? Absolutely. But I was not asking for that. I just wanted to get on the bus. Bus wasn't full in October. Fair enough, but I'm not asking for any extra room. A passenger has offered to let me sit next to him, so why can I not board the bus? Well, this is our policy, and no, you're not boarding the bus. And so I felt like I had to do what I had to do and stand there and hold it up for an hour. It was an act of rebellion. There was some media coverage, and there was an article in the Castanet newspaper, and I kind of gave my version of events, and then there was a separate article published where Ebus gave their version of events, and they basically commended the driver for upholding company policies, and they said, oh, apparently passengers were tipping her and she was such a great driver, and they won't even admit that they did anything wrong.
I read that article and I thought, wow, there is no attention to the fact that this is a violation of human rights and that you were distinctly targeted because you have a disability and you happen to use a tool that's a dog. And so there was no mention of like, yeah, this woman was singled out because she's disabled and was not allowed on the bus. And I just thought, wow. And if the driver is saying you actually need 4 seats to get a service dog on here. I mean, there obviously needs to be education there. And so there just needs to be a complete overhaul of people's discomfort or inability to accommodate disabled people. I think it's just atrocious at um, at how somebody who, yeah, the policy may say 48 hours, and the policy in itself can be a useless one and a pointless one, and arguably discriminatory because you're the only one who has to do it, and no sighted person has to do that. And if you used a cane, you wouldn't have to do that. So what's the point? But just the driver's response of being so punitive is it needs to change. And, there needs to be more education about disabled people. That's just my view. Like, I there's international laws saying you can't discriminate against disabled people. There's federal laws. There's a provincial law, and yet it's still happening. So, do you have any ideas for how we can fix this? I know that's a big question, but it's my ultimate goal.
Yeah, I mean, goodness. I think that people need to be educated for sure. There needs to be education of, like sensitivity training, but also education of the laws because the police were not enforcing the guide and service dog law. They may have been enforcing the civic law or whatever, I don't know. But there is guide and service dog law that says that if I'm not asking for any additional accommodation, which I was not, then there was no reason why I shouldn't have been on the bus. But yeah, I think that people just need to be made aware and it needs to be done in a practical way. You can't just have somebody click through a little training module at their desk and click, I've read and agreed to this, or, watch some 5-minute video that they're going to forget in a day. Like, I really feel like the training needs to be practical and, useful. Maybe I don't know, maybe there needs to be some role play where they are discriminated against because of their disability so they can personally see how it feels. I mean, I don't want anybody to know how this feels because it feels terrible, but sometimes I feel like the only way for people to learn or care is if it happens to them. But there does need to be changes at all levels. The police need to be made aware of the guide and service dog laws, and companies that transport people or deal with the general public need to be aware of these laws as well. If your service animal is like a guide horse or something, then maybe you would legitimately need 4 seats, but my dog is 45 pounds. All seeing eye dogs are trained to sit in small spaces, even if my dog was 60 pounds. This is something that they're trained for since puppyhood and that they're used to. And it needs to be known. We don't need extra accommodation.
Hmm. Yeah, I know for me, like whenever an incident happens, it's like I want to shoot out of my skin into oblivion. Like it's just like it's such a strong reaction of like
Yes,
I do not want to be here and like this
exactly.
is awful.
It is, and it stays with you. It's nothing you just forget, and it grates on you, and it's exhausting. And people say, "Oh, well, you just need to educate people," and it's like that kind of advocacy fatigue is a real thing, and I want to fight this. I have already put in a complaint with the Human Rights Tribunal. I haven't heard anything yet, but I've spoken to other blind people who have kind of canceled me on like what they think I should do, and I absolutely want to fight this, but I also don't know how much energy I have. My life is just personally looking for employment and finishing school and everything. Like it's a very transitional phase for me right now, and I'm tired and I don't know how much energy I have, but I will give this as much as I can.
Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely do. Yeah, I've had dogs since 2007. It's absolutely gotten worse. And it's yeah, invading your space, and you feel like, I mean, as a person with a disability, you're already made to feel other by living in a society that is not meant for you. And then you have this tool that just happens to be a cute four-legged dog that's awesome, and you get even more ostracized for that decision. And people, there's no remorse. Like the driver just gets to carry on with her trips. And I don't know how many of that route she's done since December 21st, but probably quite a few. And I've heard mixed opinions on the Human Rights Tribunal. I don't know. People have told me, sometimes they're in your favor, but oftentimes when there's a dog involved, they're not. And I just feel like if the police and the Human Rights Tribunal and all these things that are supposed to be for you are not, then who is? It made me realize that society in general does not care about you. Your family cares about you, your friends care about you. Random people on the internet who read the comment section, some of them care about you, but the general population really does not. And I mean, I'm sure that's like a very negative thing to say, but that's honestly how it feels. And it's just, I don't know, it's just heavy.
Yeah, and demoralizing. And it's like, okay, well, are all of these laws in place just for show? Is that what we're, yeah, if there's no repercussion, there's no follow up, there's no nothing.